Allow me now to present to you Mr. Michael Sudarkasa, the CEO of the African Business Group based in Johannesburg. Trained as a lawyer, Michael literally wrote the book on doing business in Africa some 30 years ago. Today, in addition to his consulting responsibilities, he leads an organization called Impact at Africa, which is a platform for everyone in the African impact investment ecosystem. Please welcome warmly my friend, Michael Sudarkasa.
My name is Michael Sudarkasa. I am the CEO of Africa Business Group. We are a Johannesburg-based, continentally active African economic development advisory firm. Our focus is really four key sectors. So we work in the agricultural space, we work in the renewable energy space, particularly around solar, also in the sustainable tourism space, and also more recently in the healthcare space. I also am the board chair of an organization called Impact at Africa. And Impact at Africa is a UNDP incubated organization that is a membership body, and we're focused on improving and developing the strength of the ecosystem for impact investment on the continent. If you look at areas that I think are particularly dynamic and working in terms of impact investment on the continent, I think key areas are one, the fact that social entrepreneurship and social enterprises and corporate enterprises with a social agenda are increasingly in focus today. And there's a lot more support for those institutions than existed a decade or so ago. Also, I think that the role of ESG and an ESG lens for investors has increased to focus on the environmental impact of investment, the social components of investments, and the governance aspects of investment. That's also quite positive today. We also have had really an explosion of incubators and accelerators and business support programs on the continent, which has strengthened the caliber, if you will, of SMEs on the continent and increased knowledge amongst entrepreneurs about what constitutes a strong and growing business, if you will. And so I think those are all positive things, and that's helping the impact investment ecosystem. What's missing is, to me, there's still not enough equity in the impact investment space. And what I mean by that is there are still too few women founders being funded, still too few African-born founders being funded. And that's a real challenge. As well, there's still too few pools of capital formed on the continent. And so there's a need for more domestic resource mobilization and frankly, a need for more government support for the impact investment space. It can't just be an initiative that's driven by well-meaning and well-intentioned stakeholders who are off the continent. If you ask me what is exciting in terms of the impact investment space and developments on the continent, I think the most catalytic initiative that in recent memory for me is the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and the promulgation of that in January. And I say that because even though there are still challenges in terms of intra-African trade and non-tariff barriers, it's an initiative that focuses the mind across the continent on how to trade in between the continent. And it's also stimulating thoughts about to invest, to plant a flag across the continent. As companies try and develop regional value chains and cross-continental value chains, it really pretends to provide tremendous opportunity for growth on the continent. Another thing that is particularly interesting for me is the increasing interest by Africa's diaspora in investing on the continent and also providing technical assistance to the continent. And lastly, also creating markets for products made on the continent. All three of those areas will be catalytic, in my opinion, over the next decade and beyond. I think also the fintech growth and the growth of micro investment and the ability crowdfunding to mobilize smaller pools of capital and deploy those is also quite exciting, because as it becomes less expensive to mobilize capital, that capital can do a lot of good on the continent and in ways that we hadn't seen in the past. I think some of the ideas that we are promoting and that I think need to be promoted as we go into this decade of delivery in terms of supporting the Sustainable Development Goals. One is the idea of having supplier development programs that give SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, tutor, if you will, and a market. So helping those enterprises improve their quality, helping them improve their capacity and the quantity of output that they can develop. Such initiatives have had tremendous impact in the US and other parts of the world, and we need more of that on the continent. I also think the opportunities that are coming to fore subcontracting where there are corporate sustainability initiatives underway as focus on climate change and mitigating climate impact, developing greater resilience and sustainability comes to fore. There are opportunities for social enterprises to play a role there, and I think that's key. I also think that increasingly, and we need a lot more work there, and this is one of the advocacy areas of Impact in Africa, there are opportunities for public-private collaboration, and if not formal public-private partnership, but ways in which the private sector can support the public sector agenda in terms of moving the continent forward in a number of areas, but particularly around the SDGs and around Agenda 2063, which is the Africa Union's long-term development strategy. I also am excited about the initiatives that are being undertaken to mobilize green capital, if you will. The Global Climate Fund is the leading pool of capital in this regard, but historically its focus has been on the public sector. So as more and more initiatives arise to leverage that capital for private investment, I think that will have tremendous impact on the continent. I think that lastly, also, we're encouraging more public-private dialogue between entities on the continent that are looking at impact investment and African governments. I think that it's critical that you have African governments to not only create a better enabling environment for impact investment, but also to mobilize pools of capital, whether it's through pension capital or otherwise, that flow into this sector. If you look at the success of impact investment around the world, in all of those countries, it's been locally led development. Even if you want to lever development partner capital or capital formed offshore, it's critical, I think, that we create a sense that Africa is investing in Africa.